Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the GangstaPriest podcast. As always, I'm your host, Colby Metter, coming at you with another episode on this very fine Wednesday. It is hump day, it is the middle of the work week, but we are keeping things rolling here on the show with the second episode of our three-part series on The Office. If you've been tuning into the show, I do want to thank you and give you my appreciation. I've gotten a lot of feedback, a lot of comments, a lot of criticism. And it's all good. So please keep encouraging me in that. And I do want to let you know that I am continuing to try and find ways to legitimize the work that we're doing here on the show. So again, thank you for your support. It means a lot. And if you have any ideas for any upcoming episodes, be sure to reach out, shoot me a text, and we'll see if we can fit something onto the show. If you have been checking out, I got a little bit caught up last week. I had planned to do a three-part series on The Office, and I'm still planning on doing that. But I kind of got caught up a little bit with work, so I wasn't able to get some uploads. My last upload was actually on Monday, where I had my first guest spot, courtesy of Mr. Nathan Ostrander. I was very pleased with how the show turned out. I thought it was excellent. I'm looking maybe moving forward to do guest spots every 2 weeks or so. I've got about 3 or 4 people lined up. But I was really, really happy with the format. So, again, that episode was the last episode I uploaded. If you have just been checking out the show, you can find everything on my page at the GangstaPriest podcast, which has been updated if you've been following along with a new profile picture. And that picture comes courtesy of another one of my friends, Aaron Carlson. So I do want to drop a quick shout out. Thank you, Aaron. Again, I have great love for the picture that you gave me. I'm super happy with how it turned out, and I'm proud that I can finally start displaying that on my page. We are going to jump right in today, though. I didn't really have too much else on the docket. So to give myself more time to speak on today's issue, as you know, I love to talk, we're just going to jump right into the thick of it. So as I said, this is episode 2 of my 3-part series on The Office. A few episodes back, in the first part of the series, we took a look at the character of Michael Scott, who is perhaps at the forefront of the success that was the United States version of The Office. As we all know, if you are a fan of the show, in the later seasons when Steve Carell left, the show definitely took a major dip in quality. And so it was a very large part of their success and a huge reason why so many people love the show. And so we took a look at the character of Michael Scott and kind of did what we usually do on the show here, break things down, look at themes, look at how they apply to our lives. And today, of course, is going to be no different. Today's episode is actually going to be on the theme of love. There's a lot of different relationships that happen in the course of The Office, and so there's a lot of different things to look at. And of course, we don't have time to talk about every single relationship today. But if you are someone who's a fan of the show, you can comment below. Let me know who your favorite couple is on The Office. There's one, though, that is perhaps the greatest example of love on The Office. It's a major storyline throughout, so many arcs about it, and I really felt like there was a lot of good things to talk about there. And of course, I am talking about Ryan and Kelly Kapoor. No, I'm just kidding. I'm, of course, talking about PB&J, Pam Beesly, and Jim Halpert. The 2 stars of the characters, Jenna Fisher and, I don't know why I just blanked. John Krasinski. Apologize for that. I don't know why I just blanked on that. But they brought great energy to their roles. Again, just like Steve Carell, really carried a large part of the show's success. And there's so many episodes that center on their relationship, where it goes, and so I thought that would be a great topic to talk about today. I couldn't go and do a 3-part series without talking about Jim and Pam, so that's what we're going to get into today. Now, as I mentioned, the theme of love is very present throughout the entire run of The Office, and I think it's most explored between Pam and Jim. When you're looking at dramatic things, give me a second here, having some issues with the laptop. All right, I think we're good. So when you're looking at storylines in a dramatic sense, and this is to kind of give you a little bit inside the minds of writers and just kind of the foundation of good dramatic writing. One thing is what we would call the kiss or kill moment. And so, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but in dramatic terms, the kiss or kill moment is when you have two characters in a scene that have reached a point where they are inches apart from one another, face to face. You think of like a UFC when they're, talking up the match that's upcoming, and so, two fighters are right in each other's face. And in acting, or in dramatic terms, we call this the kiss or kill moment. Because in that moment, there's so much charged emotion that the character really only has two options. Option one, they're going to sock your face off, and things are going to, it's like, powder keg, things are just going to blow up. Or two, it's a very emotional, sensual moment. And so these characters are going to engage and embrace in a very, sensual kiss. And it can be erotic, it can be romantic. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. But it's one of the most charged moments in all of drama. And so as writers, we utilize... So when you're looking at storylines in a dramatic sense, and this is to kind of give you a little bit inside the minds of writers and just kind of the foundation of good dramatic writing. One thing is what we would call the kiss or kill moment. And so, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but in dramatic terms, the kiss or kill moment is when you have two characters in a scene that have reached a point where they are inches apart from one another, face to face. You think of like a UFC when they're, talking up the match that's upcoming, and so, two fighters are right in each other's face. And in acting, or in dramatic terms, we call this the kiss or kill moment. Because in that moment, there's so much charged emotion that the character really only has two options. Option one, they're going to sock your face off, and things are going to, it's like, powder keg, things are just going to blow up. Or two, it's a very emotional, sensual moment. And so these characters are going to engage and embrace in a very, sensual kiss. And it can be erotic, it can be romantic. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. But it's one of the most charged moments in all of drama. And so as writers, we utilize moments like that to push and propel the story forward. When it comes to drama, and looking at those kiss or kill moments, or looking at in dramatic structure what we'd call the climax, the thing that the storyline is building towards, the more engaging and entertaining of a journey that we have, the better the payoff. And so it's the writer's job to hook the audience's attention at the beginning, and then to slowly build them on this journey. It's kind of like going up a mountain, right? You're slowly climbing, you're climbing. And when you get to the top of the mountain, the view is incredible. But you can't just start off at the top of the mountain. That's a great payoff. It's a beautiful view. But if you start from the top of the mountain, then your audience is going to feel a bit cheated. They're not going to feel like they, went through this journey with the character. And so as writers, they got to find ways to heighten and elevate that tension and that drama to get them to the climax, to get them to the kiss or kill moments. Sports is another great example of this. You think about, I'm a big NBA fan, or you think about even March Madness. If we were to just throw teams into a March Madness style tournament, throw collegiate teams into it, it would be interesting, perhaps, but there wouldn't be as much fulfillment of a team winning it all as it were if we had the entire season that comes beforehand. Because over the course of the season, it writes itself. There's injuries, and there's these little dramatic storylines that happen, and there's conference games and rivalry games, and each win or loss builds this unique narrative that propels us forward into the postseason. And then we get into the postseason, and so now the teams are set and the matchups are set, and there's this sense of the unknown. We know there's going to be a champion at the end of the tournament, but we don't know how it's going to play out. And so as viewers, the season gets us invested in it, and then the postseason elevates that until ultimately we have a champion. And I think the reason why that feels so satisfying as a viewer is because, again, if you've gone through that journey with the team, you almost feel like you've achieved something yourself, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but that's how we are as humans. And whether you're reading a book or watching a film, it's this attachment to a character that creates those feelings of catharsis. And so, again, when we get to the end of the journey, we feel relief. The difficulty for writers with this, number one, is sustaining momentum. Another show that I'm sure I'll talk about here in the future that I've been watching through is Breaking Bad. And it's mind-blowing how well they're able to elevate that, but do it in a realistic way. When we... You all probably know... You can probably think of an example of this in a movie or a TV show where it's kind of like M. Night Shyamalan, for example. There's some kind of twist thrown in there, right? There's a wrench thrown into things. And if it's done in a way that's natural and believable, then we enjoy that. But if something happens out of the blue, out of left field, characters introduced randomly and they have an impact on the plot, then it's left us with a bad taste in our mouths. We don't feel like it was believable, or they use something happening as a vehicle to get a character to a certain point of mind, but it happened in a way that was just unnatural. And so writers have this task of balancing all these different things and finding ways to keep the soup tasting good but not overpower it. It's a very tough job. But when you look at it in The Office, on top of just being able to do it exceptionally over the course of the series, Pam and Jim's story, and I really want to focus on the first half of it today. I don't want to kind of get into their marriage. There's some good things there, but to me, the kiss or kill moment is up to the moment of Jim proposing to Pam, and then ultimately, the character in Niagara Falls where they get married. And I think that drive for us, this ride that we get to partake in, is just so wonderfully done. I don't know too many people who have watched The Office and who have watched this unfold between Pam and Jim who don't, at the end of it, feel this sense of completion and enjoyment. And part of what builds that is as characters and as people ourselves. You've always heard the line, an actor will ask, "What's my motivation?" Well, we as people and characters, we want something out of life. There's something that we're working towards, and this can be something big or this can be something small. Some examples of small things in The Office. There's an episode where Ryan has become a part of corporate, and so he unveils this plan to kind of modernize the company and unveil a new company website. And Dwight is just beside himself about this. He thinks that, a stupid computer is not going to beat the personal touch of a salesman. And what's also layered into that is Dwight is struggling in his relationship with Angela, who almost wants nothing to do with him at that point in the show. And so Dwight kind of gets this personal goal of trying to beat the computer in sales. And so there's so many, that's his drive, and there's so many reasons for it. But it's something small, and it's not grandiose. He's not trying to go out and change the world or end a war or, solve a big problem. It's relatively simple. But it's in those simple moments that build towards a bigger ideal, a more universal theme like love and his pursuit of Angela. Another example is when, Jim, in one of the early episodes, he wants to host a house party, a barbecue for his coworkers. But he doesn't invite Michael because he's afraid that Michael will ruin the night for everyone with his presence. And so Jim's motivation in that episode is trying to get people amped up about this party and plan for it while at the same time keeping things secret from Michael. And so if you're someone who's looking to get into analysis, you can start to ask yourself, what are these things in episodes? What is it that a character wants? And when you start to ask those things, then you can begin to wonder and question, okay, is this good drama? Are we figuring out what the character wants? And is there a good, natural, realistic build to it? Or does it fall flat? And then when a character achieves that, is there another step? Is the drama building? If you think of it in terms of, a lot of times when you think about the dramatic structure, it's kind of like you've probably seen the heart monitors before. So an erratic heartbeat is all over the place, right? There's dips and valleys, and things are kind of out of control in the monitor. A steady heartbeat has a nice, constant rhythm. This pulse that, the formula that it's following is consistent. And then there's flatline, which is when there's no pulse at all, and so you just see a straight line on the screen. Flatline in dramatic terms is a story that just doesn't go anywhere. And so it's kind of like you probably have a friend who's told you a story before, and oh, I got up and I had breakfast and I went to work and I came home, and so you're sitting there wondering like, what was the point of that story? But then on the flip side, if someone tells you a story and they're like, yeah, I woke up and there was an alien spacecraft in my front yard and these aliens came out and I fought them and it was crazy. There was explosions everywhere. Like, that would be an interesting story, but I don't know if you would get as invested in it because, again, there wasn't that slow burn. They just threw everything in your face at the start. When you have that slow build and when you have those small desires that lead to the big ones, that lead to those kiss or kill moments, and the stakes get raised, typically you see this over the course of a TV arc, that's where we're going to get that big payoff. And when you have those big payoffs that stick with us, again, I think that's when you have a very good work of art and a very good example of good television and good writing. I had a friend who has reminded me constantly, time and time again, if it were easy, everyone would do it. And the same is true, I think, in what we see here with Jim and Pam. Having a big goal, having a big dream is a very entertaining thing. Kind of, again, going back to like universal themes, the theme of love, of wanting love, or finding purpose in life, or, I don't know, adopting a child and raising them, or fighting for your country. These are all kind of big universal themes that we can all connect with in our lives. We can all kind of understand them to some degree or another. The problem is if you have these big dreams, but there's not really any pushback on them, then again, your story is going to fall flat. Because if it was easy, everyone would do it. We know in life that when you have a goal, you don't just magically wake up and attain it. You have to work at it. It takes dedication. It takes time. And there are forces that push back against us. That's the human experience. And this struggle can come from all sorts of places, both, again, in writing and in our real lives. There's internal struggle, which is the voices in our head or our conscience that are constantly pushing back on us, be it pride or the fear of failure or a sense of rejection or not being good enough. There's external forces. Another person could be trying to keep us from achieving our goal. Or maybe it's a force of nature. Literal nature, like a tornado or a hurricane. Or it could be, something physical. Maybe you have a handicap, or maybe your dream is to get a house and remodel it, and then a fire comes and destroys it. Right? So there's both internal and external forces that push back against us. And so in crafting a story, you have to have that finish line in mind, and you have to have your characters and their motivations, and so you kind of know the framework of where they're starting and where you want to take them to. But as they're pursuing these goals, these small goals toward the bigger goals, you got to throw those struggles at them. You got to have that pushback. And again, then when they cross that finish line, just like in a marathon, that's what makes it more worthwhile for the character and for us as viewers. And it's through those trials that I think an artist can kind of incorporate the themes of what they believe and what they're trying to speak to us, the viewer. In the end, characters and people either get what we want or we don't get what we want. There are winners and there are losers. And what we get or what we think we want to get is not always what is good for us. And what we think we don't want is not always bad for us. Again, those are things that can be explored in a piece of writing. A lot of times, if you kind of want to whittle it down to its very basic core, I mean, these are you've probably seen the happy face or the happy mask and the sad mask, and those are to represent, in drama, going all the way back to the Greeks, tragedy and comedy. In a tragedy, typically a character, it ends on a sort of a note of, I don't know, it's a very sad and somber note. A character maybe didn't get what they wanted or something sad happened. If it's a comedy, the character tends to get what they want. And so again, it's through those vehicles that an artist can convey what he perceives about life and give it to us. And so in this connection of Jim and Pam, the universal theme here is love. It's of course a journey of love. And at the start, we have our two characters, Pam, a receptionist, who is engaged to Roy at the start of the series. And as we come to know Pam in the first couple episodes, we recognize that Pam is kind of soft spoken. I wrote down that she's a plain Jane. I don't mean that in a mean way, but she's not someone who's going to leap out off the page at you. She's not really a charismatic person. She's nice. She's very friendly. She has that, kindred spirit about her. But then we have Jim. And Jim is one of those guys who does leap out at you, right? He is one of the leads of the show, a protagonist. Jim is a salesman, and he's a prankster. He likes to have fun. He recognizes that the office and all of its modernness is not the most, it's not the strongest place to experience life and human creativity. And so Jim tries to overcome that by pranking his coworkers, and typically Dwight receives the brunt of most of that. But he has a good sense of humor. He's competent and smart. And so when we start to see these two characters, I think most people gravitate towards Jim. We like Jim and we see a sense of ourself in him. And I think the reason that we like Pam, and again, maybe I'm wrong here, and I'm not saying either that Pam is a boring character. I don't think that. But she doesn't really start to get more well-rounded, I think, until season 2 and then onward. I think what really tips us off to Pam at the start is because we like Jim, and then we kind of start to see the foundation that's being laid for Jim's romantic feelings towards Pam. We kind of see this sprinkle of hope that the writers put on the fire. Right? They already, in the back of our mind, they show us, they set up this love triangle, and so we know that Pam is engaged to Roy, but we also know some facts, like they've been engaged for a long time, they haven't set a date, Roy has his faults, him and Pam's relationship is not on the greatest of terms, and so the writers do a very clever job of setting up Roy as the de facto kind of bad guy in the relationship, right? I don't know too many people who are fans of the show who will say, I wanted Pam to end up with Roy all along. And I think that's another example of good writing, because Roy is very believable. He's your blue-collar man. He goes to work, he comes home and drinks beer. He's kind of a meathead. He's a Neanderthal. He's a tough worker, but he's a laborer. There's not really much else going on about him. I think the only unbelievable moment is, and this is maybe season 3, but there's a moment where Pam is trying to be more confident in herself, and so she's trying to be more honest with others. And there's a night where her and Roy are at a bar, and she shares with Roy that she had romantic feelings for Jim, and there might have been some physical contact between the two of them, why her and Roy were engaged. And this sets Roy off, and perhaps rightly so, but Roy's response to this is to begin literally destroying the bar with his brother. And I can believe that someone, who's quick to anger might throw a bottle or yell at Pam, but like when they start chucking bottles at the bar and literally breaking stools and causing mayhem, it's a bit past that line of believability. The same thing we talked a little bit back in the episode talking about Michael. But overall, I think they do an excellent job of kind of already setting up, again, this love triangle and reeling the audience in and who we want to be together. And setting that kiss or kill moment, that finish line, in the distance. Early on, the romantic and the sexual tension is very prevalent. We see the way that Jim looks at Pam. We see how he's always going to her desk and how they joke with one another. Typically when two people are like that and are smiling around one another, there's a sense of camaraderie. And being that they're the opposite sex, that's kind of an indicator that perhaps someone likes someone. Doesn't always mean the case, but the way that Jim kind of goes out of his way to talk to Pam, we know that he has a very deep-seated fondness for her. And one of the ways that the show showcases this, and this is excellent use of cinematography, but there's all these close-ups, of Jim. Jim will do something, and then it zooms in on Pam's face, and we see the way that she reacts, or vice versa. And so it's an excellent way to showcase their inner feelings. And this begins to progress. When when Jim kind of realizes that maybe he doesn't have a shot with Pam, and he starts dating Katie. We hear some of Pam's thoughts, and we can tell that maybe she doesn't. I mean, she's happy for Jim, but maybe she isn't the most excited about the relationship. And so you're left to wonder, well, why would she even say a thing like that? I wonder if maybe Pam has feelings back for Jim. We see it in the episode in the first season, where the basketball episode, where Jim's kind of trying to secretly one up Roy a little bit, is the alpha male. And Pam is smiling and kind of likes this battle that's going on. And at the end of the episode, Jim comes over to sort of be like, oh yeah, did you see that? And they're talking for a little bit, and then Roy comes over and grabs Pam and starts kissing her. And so Jim kind of turns away, a little bit awkward feeling. And so it's in these moments that, like, you as a viewer are tipped off. Like, that those seeds have been set. And because we like Jim, and because we like Pam, and we think they're good people, and we want characters we like to be happy, we want them to wind up together. But of course, if that was just the path that we went on, and then, Pam broke up with Roy and got together with Jim, well, that would make for good storytelling. Again, there has to be some struggle in there. And so Roy is a physical struggle for Jim to overcome. It's an internal struggle for Pam. Because I think Pam knows, she doesn't 100% know if Roy is really the right one for her. That's something, if you ever dated somebody for a significant period of time, you always kind of ask those internal questions. Is this the right one? Hindsight's always 20/20. Am I doing the right thing? And then when Jim gets together with Katie, and then later with Karen, those are physical struggles that Pam has to overcome. The physical distance when Jim moves to the Utica branch, that's another obstacle to overcome. And so there's all these things that are getting sprinkled in. The writers hook you. You're on Team Pam and Jim, and then they start sprinkling in these little things to stoke the fire, and then they start putting these hurdles in the way. And again, this is done over the course of so many episodes that desire in you, it's like you want to see them succeed, is stoked more and more and more. And so again, excellent arc to that kiss or kill moment. One of the earlier examples, I think you see the fondness and perhaps the more than meets the eye, is in the episode The Dundies. And I know I talked about this in the Michael Scott episode that I did on my podcast, but I really truly think that it is just an excellent episode in itself, and sets up a lot of things down the road. At some point during the night, Roy, he pulls Pam outside. He's like, look, I'm done with this night. This is silly. I want to go home. And Pam and him kind of have this fight. She's like, look, you're not even asking about my feelings. I want to stay. I'm having fun. And so Pam ends up deciding to be independent and making the decision to stay on her own. And to kind of curb those feelings she has of being upset with Roy, Pam begins to drink. And she drinks pretty heavily. And this leads to the point when Pam gets her award in the night. She is just overcome with emotion and joy. And she gives this, silly little acceptance speech. And when she comes off the stage, she comes to Jim and she hugs him and she gives him this big kiss. And so, Jim kind of likes the fact that he got a kiss out of Pam. But he kind of plays it off, oh, well, she was drunk, it meant nothing. But, maybe there is something more there. Again, they kind of reel you in. On top of the fact that if you recognize that Jim is the one who went to Michael, there's kind of this running gag Michael does every year where he's like, the longest engagement award. Pam and Roy, are they ever going to get married? Who knows? And every year they don't get married, the joke goes on. And Jim recognizes how this makes Pam feel, and so he actually goes to Michael and tells him that he should probably change the joke. It's outdated. And so, again, you see the ways that Jim kind of goes out of his path to do things kind of secretly or out of the loop for Pam. And so, again, it continually just stoking that fire, and it sets us up for this journey that we take. This all continues to build to excuse me, one of the best episodes in the entire series, Casino Night, in which And if you haven't seen, I guess I should say spoiler alert. You should have seen it by now, so go watch the show. But in Casino Night, Michael has kind of set the warehouse up for this impromptu night of gambling where the workers will come and they'll bring their money and they're playing for charity. And of course, Michael, as the over the top character that he is trying to, have fun and do something that raises the spirits of his employees. And so there's a scene about midway through, maybe a little over halfway, where Jim and Pam have been playing Texas Hold'em. And so they're kind of having this one-on-one reaction. And Jim is talking to Pam, and so Pam, they're looking at one another and staring one another down, and Jim's like, I think you're bluffing. There's no way you can beat what I have. And so Pam's like, all right, call me then. And so she goes all in, and Jim calls her on it, and they flip their cards. Pam wasn't bluffing. She wins the bet. And Jim kind of smiles and says, good job. It's a very, very nice, natural moment. But later, Jim is kind of reflecting on this, and so he goes outside, he finds Pam. Roy says, I'm going to go home, and so he says goodbye to her. And, tells Jim to look after her. And so Pam, she's laughing, she's giggly. She's like, oh, how'd that feel? You want me to go take some more of your money? And Jim kind of changes the tone a little bit, and he says, no, there's something kind of serious that I want to talk to you about. And so Pam's like, what? And there's this nice long pause that leads up to that kiss or kill moment. And Jim looks her in the eyes, and he says, I love you. That's the first time that he has admitted his feelings for Pam. And so first, there's this reaction as an audience when you see that, where there's this huge breath of relief, like the man finally did it. He finally admitted his feelings of love for her. We've been waiting for this moment. But then there's that little twinge of fear. Because we know when you take a risk like that, you don't know how the other person is going to respond, on top of the fact that this woman is engaged. And so we wait to hear Pam's response, and she looks at him, and she's like, she just doesn't know what to say, and she's like, you have no idea how much your friendship means to me. And Jim's like, no, I want to be more than friends. I want to be with you. And Pam turns him down. And she says, I'm sorry. And so again, another hurdle, and we as the audience groan and cringe, and we're like, Pam, what the fuck are you doing? This is the guy that loves you, that wants to be with you, and he's a good man, and he will serve you in that way. And Roy is an idiot. And Pam, for whatever reason, turns him down. And she has every right to do that. It's her life. And Jim, the tears start to come, and that's the moment that really seals it. I've gotten to the point where I've seen that episode so many times, it still impacts me. I don't cry, but man, the first 5 times I probably watched that episode, every single time, I would find myself choking up, because to understand and empathize as a viewer of how hard that moment is for Jim to get the courage to say those things to Pam, knowing full and well he could get turned down, and then to get turned down, it's, oh man, it's such a hard thing. It's a heart-wrenching thing. And to watch him walk away defeated and to apologize for misconstruing their relationship is, man, as I said, there's winners and there's losers. And in that moment, Jim loses. And we as the viewers are left to deal with those not so fun feelings of catharsis, just like Jim is left to feel like those feelings on his own. And so then the episode continues with this. Pam goes upstairs to the upper part of the office, and she calls her mom, one of the closest people in her life, to talk about it. And she doesn't even know what to feel. She's kind of just, her mind is numb. And in comes Jim. And he pulls her in and he gives her a kiss. And she returns it. Again, that kiss or kill moment. So now we're like excited, like, oh my gosh, maybe she's realizing this is the one. And it's this nice little moment. There's still hope. And then Pam pulls away and she's like, I think we're drunk. Jim's like, no, I'm not. Are you? And she's like, no. And so he smiles and goes back in for another kiss, and she stops him, and she's like, I can't do this. I'm with Roy. And he's like, are you really going to marry him? And she's like, yes, I am. And I know I'm sitting here talking out the entire scene, but it's so good because, again, going back to what I said earlier, we as humans want something. And the greater thing that we want, the more deeper our emotions are connected to it. And so we know that Jim wants Pam. It's something that all of us want, whether you're straight or gay or black or white. Most of us, not all of us, but most of us want to have someone love us in return. And when we get rejected in that, it's the worst feeling in the world. I mean, it's like taking a blow to the gut from Mike Tyson. It does not feel fun. It just cuts all the wind out of our sails. And the recovery from that is even harder. And we know Jim's going to have to deal with this. And so that scene, I think, is a wonderful build. And what I love is it's a roadblock that the writers give us. But the story doesn't end there. They continue with Pam breaking off her engagement with Roy. And again, stoking that hope again in season 2. Maybe Pam is realizing that Roy's not the one for her. And that there's that voice in the back of her head, but it has to get larger and larger until Pam can accept that and realize that, this is the decision I need to make, that he's not the one for me. But now her hurdle is Jim moving away. And then Jim comes back with the merger, but now Jim is dating someone new. And now Pam has to be the one to sit there, just like Jim did, to sit there and watch the guy that she wants to be with have all these things that she could have had with someone else. And on top of that, now she's feeling guilt and regret because it's like she had an opportunity for that and she turned it down. And so the shifting back and forth of emotions and turmoil and struggle, that is this journey that we're taken on. And it keeps going back and forth and drawing us in. And I could sit and we could talk. I mean, you know the story. You know there's this back and forth that happens until Pam does the same thing Jim does at beach games. The episode where, Michael has put together this idea. He takes everybody to the beach and he puts together this day of games to try and figure out who's going to replace him as the manager of Dunder Mifflin. But it's Pam in the end who finally comes out and she wants to be honest with everyone. So she starts doing it. And she has this moment with Jim where she straight up tells him, "You were right. I was wrong. I should have never been with Roy. And I miss our friendship, and I miss being around you. And I know you're with Karen, and that's cool, but I don't know. I'm trying to get things off my chest." And of course, Karen doesn't like that moment very much, but I think it's an important moment, an important risk that Pam takes because, and I don't want to get too far into this because we're going to kind of speak into this more in a moment when I try to, connect this as I normally do with our real lives. But if you've ever been in love or you ever had those feelings with someone, as Pat Benatar says, love is a battlefield. And it really is. A battlefield is riddled with fallen bodies and bullets and blood. And that's exactly how love can be sometimes. Some of you guys out there are lucky. You find someone and they love you back right off the start and you don't have too many hurdles to overcome. And God bless you if that's you. You are very fortunate. For other of us, it is hurtling over body after body and getting struck and getting shot in the heart and trying to figure out how to overcome. But it's that hope, it's that kiss or kill moment, it's the finish line that we continue to fight for because love is one of those universal themes in the world. It is one of those things that is a treasure above all else. And so we continue in the fight, we continue in the marathon because we know that if we can stick around long enough, if we can find it, it's going to be meaningful. And again, it doesn't always work out for us sometimes with people. And there are people who get married to the wrong person. All right. And maybe you're someone who's out there saying, well, I don't really think that's a thing. I don't even know if there's a right person or there's one for you to marry. And that's probably true. That's a discussion for another time. But at the end of the day, if you get married, you're going to be with someone. And in doing so, it's going to be at the expense of other options. And so whenever you come to make that decision, you want to be confident in it. And we know for both the characters, Pam with Roy and Jim with Karen, there's a greater sense of doubt in the relationship than just like a small, I mean, we all sometimes, again, we all feel that sense of maybe remorse or guilt or questioning about something, and our faith is shaken a little bit. But when things are good, we overcome that. But when it's a half and half split between, I don't know if this is the one, and then the other half of the time, you're like, oh yeah, this is the one. the greater that sense of doubt and wondering, then the greater it leads me to believe if this is really the right thing for you. And as I said, we just see this in the back and forth with Pam and Jim. Now, the writers are smart. We know that The Office is a comedy. The Office has happy endings. And so eventually, Jim and Pam get together. It's a great little scene. Pam is giving this interview. And she says, Jim and I were just always on different wavelengths. Sometimes he was coming for me, and sometimes I was coming for him, and we could just never get our timing right. And whoever he winds up with, I know he's going to be happy. And then in bursts Jim, who has just come from his interview with corporate. And in interviewing with David Wallace, David asks him, what is it that you're going to miss most about Scranton? Because he wants someone who's going to be long-term here. And Jim realizes that there is something for him in Scranton. It's Pam. And he doesn't want to give up on that yet. And so as Pam's giving this interview, Jim bursts in the door and he says, "Hey, Pam, are you free for dinner tonight?" She's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "All right, it's a date." And all of the Office fans collectively go, "Yes!" And you jump off your couch and you scream and you cheer and your heart soars with the Eagles. We're all happy in that moment. And I think the reason why we're happy is not just for Jim and Pam, the characters, but there's a bit of us that it gives us hope too. Like maybe someday I will find that myself. So Jim and Pam, of course, begin dating, and then the rest of the kind of the back half of The Office focuses on their marriage, and then them kind of cementing their relationship as they progress forward. And I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on the journey to that kiss or kill moment, to the moment where Jim and Pam finally accept that they are for one another. I want to focus that in talking here in the last 10-15 minutes of the podcast episode on why I think that's important for us and how we can apply it to our lives. I always say I'm here to teach you not what to think, but how to think. And so I think there's some very important insight in the way this is written, in the way that this plays out, that we can ask ourselves in our own lives. First and foremost, for Jim and Pam, and again, I don't want to focus on this too much, but as it progresses the rest of the series, there is this sense of regret. Not regret, that's the wrong word there. This sense of wondering, was it the right decision? And I think that there's a constant affirmation of it. We see it in the beginning. We see it in the way they treat one another, the kindness they have towards one another, the concern and the sacrifice and the emotional intent to understand and listen to one another. And so there's that wonder, like, well, as the years progress, will that change? In the later episodes, Jim and Pam are constantly reaffirming this. And it doesn't mean that they don't have any troubles at all. Every married couple has troubles. I think of a couple of my friends out there, and not that they've ever had any troubles, but Carly and Eric Barnes, I don't know if they are listening to this or ever do, but I remember years ago, I was at a Halloween party with Eric, one of my good friends, and we were both single and looking to mingle, and there was this really attractive girl there, Carly, who we both had our eyes on. And so we both made a move at her during the night and tried to flirt with her, and to varying degrees of success. After the night ended, I tried to talk to her for a little bit, didn't really go anywhere, so, whatever, kind of out of sight, out of mind. But Eric began to talk to her more and more, and eventually they would date. And after years of dating, they are now happily married, of which I was very thankful to be able to play a small part in their wedding as one of Eric's groomsmen. And I've known Eric for a long time, and I've gotten to know Carly over the past 3-4 years, however long it's been. And as you begin to see them date, it was more and more from a friend's standpoint of an affirmation that these two are meant to be together. You would see it in the way, again, that they would talk to one another, they would act towards one another. And now that they're married, and I don't know if it's been 1.5 years now, maybe it's not been quite that long, maybe it's been longer, I don't know. But you've been able to see it in the way they continue to treat each other since they've been married. And the things they do for one another, and the pictures they take together, and the adventures they go on. And so again, they got it right. And you see that with Jim and Pam. They got it right. Hindsight is always 2020. And if you're listening today and you're in a relationship, maybe you're having a little bit of those feelings of doubt or regret. And so I want to challenge you to really sit down and pick through those feelings. I mean, take time. That's not always the end of the journey. I'm not sitting here telling you that means you're in a bad relationship or you need to get out of it. What I am telling you is that you really need to sit and think and ask yourself, what is it that I really love about this person? And do I see this continuing if we have a future together? For some of you, you're going to say yes. And that's going to help remove a little bit of that doubt. And for others of you, maybe you're going to say no to that. And that doubt's going to grow bigger. And so I want, if that is you, to just have the confidence moving forward, whatever path you take. Because if you never settle that in your heart, that regret is always going to be nipping at your heels. And the older you get, the more that regret and that doubt is going to grow and grow and grow. And if you never address it early, I think it's going to lead to problems later on down the road. So again, first and foremost, I just want to encourage you in that. If you are someone who is dealing with that right now, sit down, have an honest conversation with yourself. Find a close friend. Sit them down and ask them, what do they perceive of you in your relationship? Talk them through what you find in your partner. And ask them if they think that those are good things or if you're focusing on the wrong superficial things. Jim and Pam's journey is well written. I talk about this from the moment we meet them, that slow burn to the kiss or kill moment. It's fraught with taking risks. Love is full of risks. You got to risk it to get the biscuit. Risk involve taking a chance asking them out. Risk involve sticking with them when maybe you're not sure. Risks involve asking them to marry you. I have another friend who just got married, and he is now very happily married, and I think he would acknowledge that it was good the way that things worked out for him, but he was dating someone for a long time, several years back. And again, as I always do, I don't want to name drop when I'm telling stories like this. I don't think he would care because he and I have a very close relationship. But I remember she was out in Alaska on a mission trip. And he had decided that this is the woman he wanted to be with. And so he went out to Alaska with the ring to propose to her, took her on top of a glacier, got down on one knee, and this girl, who had given him no real reason to think she would say no, turned him down. Now, you think you got problems in your life. Imagine having to climb down a damn glacier with a girl who just turned you down. Talk about feeling awful. And I know in that moment and in the years following, there was a sense of helplessness and feeling lost. The encouragement in that story is, again, he found someone and is now happily married. And so there was a risk there. And there was, again, winners and losers. In that moment, he lost. It led to something bigger, but in that moment, he lost. And it was a risk that he had to take. Life is full of risks. We're not made to live in these small, little, comfortable, beck and call. Everything is worked out for us. If you want the treasure at the end of the road, you got to take risks. You got to work through your feelings. Jim and Pam didn't just click overnight. It took things happening to them. It took them sitting and pondering through some of these things to really solidify their feelings for one another. It also takes standing by your decisions. Tammy Wynette sings this. Stand by your man. Stand by your man. I love that song. Whatever decision you do make, whether it's a decision to be with someone right now, whether it's a decision to marry someone, you also have to learn to stand by and own up to your decisions. You can't look in the past, and maybe you are. I mean, there's a girl in my life who I dated for 3 years, and I'm the one who ended it. And I think all the time, especially nowadays, what if I had not done that? What if I had been more patient? What if we were together? It's very easy to play the what if game, but we made decisions, and we have to stick by them. I do want to suggest this, and as we're kind of wrapping up here, I want to give you caution in obsessing over fiction. Obsession with victory and obsession with fiction can be a very dangerous road. The reason why I wanted to explore why, writers design things the way they do is because it's kind of like a drug dealer, right? Someone who's dealing meth, again, I've been watching Breaking Bad, but someone who's dealing meth knows what their consumers want. And they know how to give them just enough, just a little bit to keep them coming back for more and more and more. Because if you give them everything they want at the front, you're getting a one-off payday. But if you give them just little breadcrumbs and you get them addicted to it, then that money is going to constantly flow. And good fiction is a drug. I've said this before, but a lot of times we use fiction to escape from reality. This can be anything: books, movies, video games. We escape to them because they give them this sense of feeling good. There's this release of dopamine, this feeling of high. We get this with Jim and Pam. When they get together, man, that cathartic release, it's like an orgasm. I know that's probably a weird analogy, but it is. It's the same feelings. And you feel that there's this release where, that feels good. He got with her. Yes. And it's okay to have those feelings. But when we start to obsess over that and we start to think, I can't tell you how many times I've gone on Bumble and someone's like, just the Pam waiting for my Jim. Or, not that I'm looking for guys, but I know guys who are like, I'm just a Jim, man. I've got a girl that I want and she's with a terrible guy. Man, someday she'll realize how good I am. I've done it myself. And I think that can be an unhealthy mindset because we start to focus on it and then we sit around and we wait and we wait. And we wait, and we wait, and next thing you know, nothing happens. And you've missed out on other opportunities because you were so obsessed on this one thing, you can never get past it. I can't tell you how to live your life. I can't tell you, if you should do that, sit down and hunker down and wait, or move on. I'm not the one here to tell you what is the right or wrong decision. Only you can make that. But again, I just want you to search your heart, know your feelings, and ask yourself, am I obsessing over something that maybe is not going to come to pass? Because not every single relationship is like you see in the movies. There's not always the knight in shining armor that comes and saves the girls and everything's happy. There's plenty of people I know who are unhappy in their marriages or who marry the wrong person. So you got to pick through those feelings. And then again, whatever happens, just stand by your decision. There's always good in some decision. So you got to learn to own your decisions and stand by it. 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, "And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love." That same line is said at the end of the episodes surrounding Jim and Pam's wedding. And I know that verse is not necessarily talking about romantic love. If you know your Greek, there's 4 different words for love. I'm going to butcher this really bad because it's been a while, but there's, I think, eros, there is agape, there's like a love on a friendship level, there's love on a erotic, romantic level, there's love on a compassion level. And so again, I know I'm butchering the crap out of that. The point I mean to say here is that I don't know if this verse is necessarily talking about romantic love. But I think romantic love and the marriage format that God has designed us, again, a man will leave his father and mother and the two will become one. Adam felt lonely and God gave him a helper. Song of Solomon is all about romantic love. And so I think love in that sense is a gift from God. We were designed to have those feelings towards someone else. It's a good thing. Again, that's why we feel good when Jim and Pam get together, because we see people who are good people and who want to be with one another and who desire for the best in one another. And so to see them come together and to see them thrive and succeed, it's a good example for the rest of us. And when that happens in our lives, again, I know I mentioned Carly and Eric. I see it in my sister and Patrick. I see it in another one of my friends, Taylor, and his wife, Brooke. And in the friend I mentioned earlier and his wife. it's in those relationships that me as an individual, when I see them, it's encouragement. Because we know that those are good things and that is a gift from God. And it should be a reflection of our relationship with God. When you can look outside of yourself and sacrifice to pour into another person and a family, it is a reflection of how our relationship should be with God. And so, again, I think that faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these is love. Love is a very, very good thing. We just gotta be careful not to make an idol out of it. I wrote down one other quote to kind of begin to wrap things up here. Until the day when God will deign to reveal the future to man, all human wisdom is contained in these words: wait and hope. Those words are the last line of The Count of Monte Cristo, my favorite novel of all time. It's a long read, but if you've never read it, go to your library and check it out right now. Another great story leading to the kiss or kill moment, leading to a climax that'll just, man, it will pull you through so many all sorts of emotions. That last line, wait and hope. I know I've talked a little bit here today, and again, my final thoughts here, I do not know what is right or wrong. I can tell you in my own life, and just being real here, you all know my love life is all over the place, and I'm a romantic, and I'm always mopey, blah, 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 blah. I never always, seem to get the girl. The most recent girl that I have cared for, and I don't want to say this too, when I talk about this, I don't ever want to come off as like, oh my gosh, I'm in love, and then like the next week, I'm in love with this person. Like, I feel like I'm strong enough and confident enough in my feelings and emotions, and I'm at the point now at 27 that I know what I want in a partner. I know that I'm looking for a strong, independent woman, a woman who is strong in her faith, a woman who I can laugh with, who has the same sense of humor as me, a woman that I find physically attractive, a woman that's going to push me to be my best self, a woman who has goals and works hard to achieve them. So the women that I have pursued are women that kind of fit those roles. And so the most recent girl that I have pursued a little bit, she has been with someone for, 4 or 5 years now, maybe. And in my mind, I see exactly like in Pam and Jim. I see a girl who's with a guy who does enough to keep her wrapped around his finger. And I'm not saying he's a terrible guy, but he's not really a respectable man. He's just kind of there. And I see a girl who it's like, if you would just jump on Team Colby for just a smidgen and take a chance on me, as ABBA would say. If she took a brief chance, I see someone that I could thrive with. That I could not only have a great life with and hopefully give her a great life too, but could go on so many adventures together and change the world. For the kingdom of Christ. I really do. And so in my mind, again, it's a battlefield, right? All's fair in love and war. If I can just try hard enough, if I can show her how I feel, and I can do enough good things, and I can encourage her in that, maybe she'll see that in me. And no matter how hard I try, no matter how hard I put my cards on the table, like, nothing has changed. And so again, I have to tell myself, am I getting obsessed over this Pam and Jim narrative? Am I sitting here thinking, like, someday she will realize it and come for me? Like, that just may not happen. There's a good chance it won't. And so, I don't know. Again, I say that to sit here and tell you that I don't know. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what to tell you, other than just to search your heart, know your feelings, make a choice, and stand by it. Be vigilant in that. And follow your heart. This girl, I don't know why. I've said it before. I don't know why green is my favorite color. I don't know why I have feelings of affection for this girl. I simply do. And they have not gone away. And until there is resolve in that, meaning her getting married, I don't know if those feelings are just going to magically disappear. But I'm okay with that. There's a strong chance she's not going to choose me. She's going to choose the other guy. It is what it is. It's part of the weird, bizarre beauty that is being a human. And I have accepted that. I have accepted the outcome that could happen. And I've accepted the fact that no matter what I say to her, it may not change her mind. But I rest my head on my pillow at night knowing that I've done all I can do. And all I continue to do is, as it says in that quote, wait and hope. And if it doesn't happen, it's okay. And if it does, then that's even better. But there's nothing else that I can do that change that situation. So just wait and hope. Don't become obsessed over it. But wait and hope in those good things. And have faith that God, who is good, will eventually give you good things if you are faithful to Him. Wherever you are at in your love life, in a relationship, if you're married, if you're single, just keep going. Keep pressing forward. Keep looking for it. Keep fighting for it. Keep affirming it. I know it's cliche, but I really do think that all things work out in the end, one way or another. And so just keep being encouraged in that. And if you need someone to talk to vent about it, to ask questions, to praise your partner, please shoot me a comment, send me a text, message me. You know how I am. I will always be open to discussion. If you're someone who wants to be challenged, some of these things we've talked about today, if there's those feelings and you're not certain one way or another, ask me. And maybe I don't know you that well, but I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of situations, and I'm checking my bias at the door. So I'd love to hear from you. Talk to me. Again, love is a universal theme, and I think it's something that we all can understand to some degree. And regardless of how you feel about them, I think it's showcased exceptionally here in Pam and Jim, in the journey they undergo. And it's one of those things that makes The Office one of the best television shows of all time. That is going to wrap it up for me today. I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart. If you've been taking the time to listen, I understand these episodes are usually an hour long. And with so much content out there nowadays, who am I to say anything, that hasn't been said before? But if you've been taking the time out of your day to tune in or to give me feedback, it just means the world to me right now. This is something that I have no clue where it's going to go. It could wind up being something small. It could be big. I don't know. And that's not really what I'm focused on. I've been trying to focus on bettering myself and doing things that I love. And talking and sharing is something that I absolutely enjoy. And if you're able to share in that in just some little bit, or if I'm able to get you to think about something in a different way, that just means the world to me. And so I thank you for joining me in that. We're going to continue to get better. We're going to continue to legitimize things on the podcast, and we're going to have a lot more fun coming down the road. I'm looking forward to having more guests on it and getting people involved with this thing. And so just continue to support us in any way you can, and I will promise you that I will continue to look for ways to get better. That is all I have to say. I got some cleaning I got to do, so I need to get to that. But thank you again for joining in. We will have one episode left in this 3-part series, our first TV show that we have undertaken here on the GangstaPriest podcast. That one will hopefully be dropping on Friday. And I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about yet. All I know is this: we will be talking about The Office. But I hope you've been enjoying this series on The Office. And again, be sure to tune in on Friday for the last of our 3-part series. Until then, this is the GangstaPriest himself, Colby Metter, signing off. And I hope I'll see you next time.